Crikey, mate, it's nearly Christmas. We've nearly done a year of the Hot Air Sports podcast. How you going, Mona?
Oh, mate, I'm okay. What's happened to 2020? Where did it all go? Where did it all go wrong? Let's just leave it behind in the rear vision mirror, crack a smile on our face and head into 2021. Let's be done with this year.
Quite right. Well, before we get into our year-end... excuse me.
Listen to it. You got the COVID there, mate.
We've both been laid low with the lurgy over the last couple of weeks, which explains our absence. Yeah. Anyway, before we get into our year-end highlights, lowlights and funny bits, since our last podcast, the All Blacks thrashed Argentina and won the Tri-Nations. Tasman the NPC in a nail-biter over Auckland.
That was a good game.
Secured promotion to the top flight, but is likely to be derailed when New Zealand Rugby moved the goalposts again and rejigged the competition to a North-South pool tournament. Stephen Adams is lined up in a New Orleans Pelicans uniform for the first time, and the Pittsburgh Steelers finally lost a game in the NFL.
Did they lose two?
I think they have since.
I think they lost another one. They're on the slide, mate. They're on the slide. Liverpool, of course, regained top spot yesterday, didn't they, with that fantastic win against Jose Mourinho. Spurs. Yes, we took on Spurs, beat them. We're top of the table. Jose Mourinho said the best team lost. Klopp said, what? What? He said the best team lost. He said, no, sorry. No, they didn't. Despite only having 24% of the ball and only half the chances that Liverpool created, how could he think that they had the best of the game? He's delusional. We've lost sporting greats as well over the last couple of weeks, haven't we, mate? Diego Armando Maradona, perhaps the best footballer of all time, passed away. And former Liverpool manager Gerard Houllier and passed away as well, which was very sad. He'd been sick over the last little while, hadn't quite let the extent of that sickness on to a lot of people, and that was quite a shock announcement when I heard about his death. Very sad. And rugby ref Nigel Owens, our favourite rugby ref, has hung up his whistle in test matches, and the Black Caps, of course, have thrashed the poor old West Indies 2-0 in the test series with some fantastic performances from our Black Caps team. We'll talk a little bit about them later. There's just so much going on, mate. And hopefully there's more to come in 2021.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we heard a few months ago that the Hellbergs have decided they're not going to do awards for 2020. Too many international sporting events being postponed, reconfigured or cancelled, including World Championships, global competitions, and, of course, the Olympics and Paralympics.
Yeah.
The 21 Hellberg Awards have been adapted to celebrate the decade champions and honour sporting excellence over the past 10 years. But we here at the Hot Air Sports Podcast think that's not fair on a few of our sports people around the world, and we would like to hand out the Haspies. So the categories are Sportsman of the Year, Sportswoman of the Year, Team of the Year, Coach of the Year, and Sporting Moment of the Year. So I'll start with my nominees for the Sportsman of the Year.
Plenty of correspondence has been gone into for these as well, hasn't there, Macca? Lots of debate, lots of arguments, and we're probably going to have a few more right now. So kick it all off for me, Macca.
My four nominees for Sportsman of the Year are the two Scots, Mclaughlin and Dixon, for their exploits in the driving seat of a motor racing car. Sam Kane, the All Blacks captain, I think he silenced plenty of critics over the 6 tests the All Blacks played this year. And my last nominee for Sportsman of the Year is Israel Adesanya.
Israel. You got a bit of fight sports in there, mate.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the cage fighting, but I mean, he's done an incredible job. You've got to give him his dues.
Absolutely. Well, Sam Kane's an interesting pick too. Israel Adesanya, he's right at the top of my one. He's one of my nominees. I don't know how you could go past him. Middleweight champ. He's beaten everyone, so probably perhaps New Zealand's most well-known sports person at the moment. So Israel Adesanya's up there with mine. Scott Dixon, obviously winning his, sixth? Yeah, sixth IndyCar championship in the States. What a fantastic performance from him. The guy is just ultra consistent and a great guy to boot. So I've got him in there. I didn't put Scottie Mclaughlin in, although what a performance in the Aussie Supercars. I just sort of thought it's the Aussie Supercars. I don't know. Anyway, I've got to choose some other people. So Kane Williamson, I chose Kane primarily for his year's work and year leading up, but also that fantastic 200 got against the West Indies. He's done very well, and also just leading the side, the Black Caps, as a captain and a leader. So I've got him in there. And speaking of leaders, I've had to go to my sport of choice. I love my rugby league. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, even though he perhaps even wasn't the best player at the Warriors this year, the way he carried that team this year, he was ultra consistent. And of course, all the things with one thing and another with COVID and having to be over there away from his family for so long, and the way he held himself on and off the field. For me, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has to be one of the nominees as well. So we've got a couple of different nominees there, but if we take the ones that are common amongst both of us, I suppose it's between Scott Dixon and Israel Adesanya, mate.
Yeah, I'm guessing that. I'm just going to throw another couple of names in the hat that I thought of earlier this morning, and they haven't actually won anything, but they've continued to perform at the highest level on the world stage, not just in Australian supercars or New Zealand rugby or anything like that. And they are Chris Wood, who scored 11 goals in the Premier League last season, Burnley's highest ever individual scorer in the Premier League, and Stephen Adams just continues to do it in the NBA, the greatest, some would say probably the greatest and most watched sporting competition on the planet. And his move to the New Orleans Pelicans is, I think it's going to bring new life to his career, and I can only wish Stephen all the very best. But yes, getting back to the nominees we had.
I guess, mate, the main difference between, those two, as you say, performers on a world level on a world stage in sports that are truly global. The difference with them, I guess, as opposed to the two that we've chosen, Scott Dixon and Israel Adesanya, is that they play team sports. So they're not held up as the pinnacle of the pinnacle. And whereas Scott Dixon, I know motorcars is a team sport. Motor racing is a team sport. Obviously, every time Scott Dixon has an interview, he says, thanks to everyone, it's always a team thing. But obviously, he is the shining light as that part of that team. And fight sports, there's only one person in the ring. So I think individual sports always, when you're nominating a sportsman, individuals will always go above a team, probably someone performing in a team sport, unless they're someone like Michael Jordan or,
I agree. I just it does annoy me a bit that the Hellbergs don't hold these guys like Chris Wood and Stephen Adams in regard. And they've got to come into the reckoning in future years.
Absolutely.
But for my Sportsman of the Year, purely for his consistency in winning it again and again and again, I'm going to plug for Scott Dixon, because that IndyCar series is really, really cutthroat. And, he's only one championship short of who Americans rate as the greatest driver ever in AJ Foyt. So that's why I'm plugging for Scott Dixon.
I'm going to go with you, mate. I love the fight sports. I love Israel Adesanya, but I think Israel Adesanya isn't even at his peak yet. He's probably got another couple of years before he's at his peak. He's unbeaten. He's absolutely amazing. He's done everything in the sport. He's probably going to go up to heavyweight and take on those guys. And my God, won't that be great to see? But yeah, you'd have to, for the duration and the consistency of Scott Dixon's performances, and the fact that it's in the States, and everything that went on this year. And also the way that he won it this year. He started with a hiss and a roar, had a real trough, came back in the end, and that last race was so exciting. IndyCars, if you'll excuse me, my French, shits all over Formula One as far as I'm concerned, as far as the spectacle goes. It really does. And I'm no motor racing fiend, but I would much rather watch the IndyCars. So let's hand out our first Haspy of the year. The envelope, please. Scott Dixon is our Sportsman of the Year.
Congratulations.
Well done, Scott.
Coco's favourite son.
Yeah, checks in the mail, Scott. Checks in the mail.
Right, let's move on to Sportswoman. We've got 4 nominations here. There's one nomination here, and I'm not sure that she performed on the...
I'll clarify when we get to it.
The first 2 nominees, Courtney Duncan, motorbike... trail bike rider, and
what a performance! Courtney Duncan, tell me about her, mate. That race, that World Championship race that she won, was phenomenal.
she has done an incredible job on her motocross bike over the last probably half a dozen years. She had 3 or 4 years of absolute heartbreaking performances, leading the championship, going into the last race, I think, on 2 occasions, only to crash out. And one of them, it was on the final corner, losing the championship was just absolutely heartbreaking. I think she's now won it 2 years in a row. And that last race, she needed to win and needed to beat her opponent by about 3 or 4 places, I think.
That's right. And she started terribly, didn't she? She fell off the bike, was last going on the first lap.
To lose it, but came through in the end, and just a great ride. And
and she's such a she's all that stuff she went through. She's such a Kiwi battler too, isn't she, mate? She's over there doing it herself. I mean, I'm sure she's got a great family, a great team behind her, but it's one of those in motor racing, especially. We seem to really punch above our weight, don't we? You look at Patton in the WRC. You look at so many Scott Dixon, of course, and Mclaughlin and Shane Van Gisbergen, and so many of them do it on the smell of an oily rag to start with. Come along as pure talent, get a couple of sponsors, go overseas. They never complain. They just get on with the business, and she's just a great. Just hold her up there for persistence and just fantastic. It was so great to see her win that race. So Courtney Duncan, well done.
Yes, second nominee, I've gone for Sophie the Smasher Devine. Absolutely caning it with the bat, and not too shabby with the ball in her hand either. Great all-round cricketer, and has just got the women's BBL Player of the Season. Couldn't get her Perth Scorchers side into the final, but did everything possible to try and get them there, and hit the most sixes by a long stretch in the whole of the competition. And
she's world class.
Oh, absolutely world class.
She actually reminds me. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the women's cricket. I mean, I know you're going to call me sexist, or someone will, but I'm not a massive fan of female sports. But Sophie Devine is one of those one of those women that you can watch, even if you sort of think, oh, this is a bit slower. But she reminds me. I mean, this isn't an undercut comment. She reminds me of a guy. The way she plays cricket, she really does. She's a power athlete, and great to watch. If she's on the telly, I will turn it on to watch it. She's a great athlete, and she's done so well. It's just a pity for me that she hasn't quite done it for our national team. She seems to do it more for a professional. So I'd like to see her do a little bit more for our White Ferns. So, Sophie Devine, good year for her as well. Lisa Carrington is our next one. She didn't have a lot of races this year, but she's just a champion, mate. She's just a champion. She never loses. So I have to have her in our top four athletes, Lisa Carrington, and also the fact that her something that we didn't mention in our intro, that her sport in the Olympics is likely to be finished, because they've got to bring in sports like breakdancing, 10-pin bowling, and mate, honestly, the Olympics is going to crap. But Lisa Carrington, she's someone that I hold up there very, very highly as a female athlete, and she'll always be in the top four as far as I'm concerned. And the final one is because she passed away last year, and she's always been probably held up there as my top Kiwi athlete of the century, really, last century. Dame Yvette Corlett, or Yvette Williams as she was known. A track and field athlete. She was the first to win an Olympic gold medal from New Zealand, held the long jump world record as well. Athlete of the century, the 100th anniversary of Athletics New Zealand, and she died last year, so I thought I'd chuck her in there. I couldn't find any other female athletes that really floated my boat, so I'm going to chuck in my athlete of the century. But who you got as your sportswoman of the year, the first annual Haspies, mate?
Oh, I don't think you can go past Courtney Duncan.
No. Yeah, I think so as well. And I just love the story, and I love the fact that she's gone from rags to riches, and just so many, just a great comeback story. And I love a good comeback story. So, Courtney Duncan.
Congratulations.
Well done, Courtney. I bet you'll be thrilled.
First ever winner of the Haspies Sportswoman.
Yeah. Oh, that award will go pride of place on a mantelpiece. I'm sure it'll be
Certainly will.
pride of place, right up there. Okay, our next category is Team of the Year. Why don't you kick it off? Because the first one, I know you're pretty keen on these guys.
They won the Super Rugby Aotearoa with a week to spare. Didn't need the final game in Auckland, which was eventually postponed anyway, due to the COVID outbreak in Auckland. Crusaders rugby team, I think, is right up there in the Team of the Year reckoning, and they've just proved year in, year out with their coach Scott Robertson that they're the team to beat come Super Rugby, whatever the competition is, whether it's the full Four Nations or just Aotearoa.
Yeah, I was going to say, they won Super Rugby Aotearoa, but it wouldn't have mattered. They would have won Super Rugby anyway, mate. They're a class team, and Scott Robertson, let's talk about him later. What a champion. He's got those guys purring down there, and so many of those players looking like future stalwarts for the All Blacks, especially some of those young guys, Will Jordan, etc. Get them in. Get those young boys in.
They've got there too, like Tom Sanders, Mitchell Dunshea, Cullen Grace, who made the All Black squad this year. I think he did get on the field in one game. But yeah, just some great forwards coming through the system. They just need to churn them out year after year, don't they? These absolutely. You'll get and this no-name character comes into the side, and suddenly he's an All Black 18 months.
Yeah, it's almost guaranteed, isn't it? It's like, there's three things certain: death taxes and the Crusaders will win the Super Rugby. It's almost how it is at the moment. Hey, you just sort of you just expect them to win, and they just seem to do it and do it and do it. Speaking of a team that didn't win quite so much, but made me so proud this year, the New Zealand Warriors is Team of the Year. They had a really good season, actually. I went through it. They actually finished 10th on the ladder, which was 3 places higher than last year. And they had so many obstacles. It's more for the obstacles that they had to overcome, and also the way they improved throughout the year under Coach Todd Payton. Very, very proud of their performances this year. And the Warriors have to be up there as one of our teams of the year for me.
Oh, I raise my hat to the New Zealand Warriors. As you know, I'm not a massive league fan, but I just think what they went through to complete that season. And you say they finished 10th, and I think for a fair amount of Kiwis, that's probably 6 places higher than many people expected. So I as I say, raise my hat to the Warriors, and it's looking exciting going ahead. Nathan Brown seems to be assembling a pretty solid squad there. It'll be great to see how they go next year. But anyway, we're focusing on 2020. Next nomination for Team of the Year is another team that didn't win anything, but I think they won a lot of hearts amongst football fans on this side of the Tasman for their performances, similar to the way the Warriors did, although this team did make the finals, much to many people's predictions. The Wellington Phoenix under coach Ufuk Talai, I think, did amazing last year and played some really great football along the way. And it was only really when they moved to Australia to finish off the season that they started to show a bit of a downturn in their performances. And I think had they finished out the season playing games in Wellington and having maybe a final game in Wellington, I think they could have gone a lot further than they actually did. So Wellington Phoenix, caps off to you.
Absolutely, mate. And when you consider at the beginning of this year, we only had about 4 players. He had so much to do, Ufuk Talai. He brought together a disparate band of all players from all over the place, put them all together. They didn't gel straight away either. So he had, they started quite slowly. But then they got a little bit of momentum again, and he just had them playing a nice style of football. It was good to watch again as well. And, I really take my hats off to those guys. And like you say, if they could have had a couple of home games at the end there, who's to say? I really thought sort of maybe 2/3 of the way through the season that they could win the whole thing. Yeah, and they could, if a few things had gone their way with injuries and a couple of other things, I mean, they really could have been contenders. I just hope that all the momentum from this year isn't just sort of extinguished. I mean, I know they've lost another couple, a couple of their, like Hooper's gone, etc. So, I just hope that they can get a couple of other good players in and supplement what they already have and build on it for next year. But definitely, man, they made me sit up and take notice this year. They were fantastic, the Phoenix. Good on them. And our final nomination for 2020 as Team of the Year is our national cricket team, the Black Caps. Obviously, they started with those games against Australia, which were a bit of a disappointment, to be a bit of an understatement. But since then, they've come right, I think. And the individual players are all performing. Our batting lineup looks more solid than it ever has, with a number of players still in the wings waiting to come in case of lack of form or injury. And our bowling stocks, I don't think I've ever seen our bowling stocks look better. We've probably got 6 to 8 almost world-class quicks that we can rotate, and it's fantastic. I mean, Lockie Ferguson can't even get near the team at the moment. So, the Black Caps, individually and collectively, they're up there for one of my teams of the year for sure.
And just as an offside, sadly, Lockie Ferguson won't be anywhere near the team for a wee while. No. He's just suffered a stress fracture in his back. But I couldn't agree more. The Black Caps have had a great year. And after the disappointments of the tests against Australia, they came back, performed really well against a star-studded Indian side in the tests earlier in the year. And, of course, the whitewash they just completed over the West Indies, winning the T20s and the test matches. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of days in reserve last week, which probably explains why I've ended up with a cold this week. And I was there with a good friend of mine, Phil Walker, and we were comparing the current side to the great side of the 80s. And when we first started the conversation, we were like, there's probably only 2 or 3 from this side who'd make that side. Once we'd actually gone through...
It's the other way around.
It was the other way around. There was only really Hadley, John Wright and Martin Crowe actually made the side. So, I think this side is probably the best team that we've been putting out in test matches ever, I think.
It's hard to argue, eh? It's hard to argue. I mean, and also the fact that we're top of the Test tree as well now, equal with Australia. Even though when I watched the Australian coverage last night, they still had 1 Australia, 2 New Zealand, but that was for the Australian market. So we're done with that. So who have you got as your team of the year, mate?
Well, you're probably going to say I'm biased, but of the 4 teams that we've got, there's only one that really that won a competition. So I'm going to have to go for the Crusaders, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, I can't argue, mate. I mean, those other 3 teams made me proud this year, but the Crusaders won. I mean, even though, like we said, the competition was a little bit compacted because of COVID, and we only played the New Zealand teams. But let's be honest, those are the best teams in the comp anyway. So they had to beat all of them, and they did it with a week early. They were class all over the place, and the Crusaders are our sports team of the year. First annual HASPE team of the year, the Canterbury. Oh no, I won't say Canterbury, just the Crusaders.
Yes, another trophy for the Rugby Park Trophy Room in St Albans and Christchurch there. Absolutely. Moving on now to Coach of the Year. We've talked a lot about his team. First nominee, Scott Robertson. Is there anything more to be said?
Maybe just break out a dance. He could probably make the Olympics now as a break dancer. Oh man! No, other than why isn't he All Black coach? I think that's probably it. Really, Scott Robertson, what a coach! I mean, the guy has won everything. What hasn't he won? He's everything every team that he coaches wins. So don't know how you can get a better resume than that. Scott Robertson definitely up there. Nolene Taurua is another nomination. Not my favourite sport, but how can you doubt this woman? She's much like Scott Robertson. Everything she touches turns to gold. And something that Scott and Nolene seem to have in common as well is the way that they can communicate. It seems to be, anyway, communicate with the younger players, the new generation of players. I know they're sort of more our age, but they seem to be able to get their message across to those younger players better or more effectively than a lot of other coaches our age. Nolene Taurua, for everything that she's achieved as New Zealand netball coach, is up there as our coach of the year. So we got Scott Robertson, Nolene Taurua, And the next one of my favourite teams, the Blues coach, Leon Mcdonald. Of course, he took over from Tana Umaga, and there was a few people weren't quite so sure about that. Tana actually dropped himself down, probably when he saw the great job that Leon was doing with the team. And the Blues were definitely one of the most improved teams over the year. They played some really good rugby and some team rugby, which was good. It wasn't all about stars. It was more about putting processes in place and team. And I think Leon Mcdonald is building a culture there at the Blues that can take them beyond the Crusaders perhaps next year. Let's hope. So Leon Mcdonald is up there as well.
Yes, I nominated Leon purely the fact that he had the Blues competing this year. We've not seen the Blues compete in a long time. And he, as you say, has completely changed the culture there, has got the whole team working together, which you could say has not happened in a long time as well. So, that was the reason I popped Leon.
No, I think good. I think that's a good choice. The final one that we've got on our Coach of the Year is someone that will not be coaching the team that he is being nominated for coaching this year. He's going elsewhere, going over to Australia, and he wasn't even the coach at the beginning of the year of this team. So I think he did a bloody marvellous job this year, though. Todd Payten, the coach of the Warriors, the interim coach, after Stephen Kearney got the sack a few games into the season. We didn't really know which way the Warriors train was heading when Stephen Kearney got the sack. I was actually quite pleased that they were making tough decisions, but I still wasn't sure where the Warriors were going to end up. And he just steadied the ship. He was just seemed to give it some straight. There was no riddles or anything about the way he's talked. He was just straight up the guts, just told it as it was, wasn't afraid to maybe not put the boot in, but be honest with the players about their performance. And they seemed to respond to the messages he was giving, and they just improved and improved and improved. He's off to coach the Cowboys next year. So good luck to him. What a coach. First time coaching gig, and he did such great work. Todd Payten is up there with my coaches of the year.
I'm just going to throw in another name in the hat as a rogue fifth nomination. And he's probably not a lot of people's favourite as a coach, but I think he's done quite a good job with the Black Caps, and that's Gary Stead.
I nearly had him. I had him on my list as number 5 as well. Yeah, absolutely. He's not my favourite. He was, but he's too conservative for me. But how can you doubt the guy's credentials after the results they've had? They've just played so well, So Gary Stead definitely up there. But who have you got? Who we got? I don't know, man. I mean, I think we gave it to the Crusaders last time. Leon Mcdonald has done some great work as well. And I do love what Noeline Tauro has done, but I'd like to give it to Todd Payten. I would, just for the fact of what he got the Warriors doing. And considering the fact that it was probably the hardest gig out of any one of those gigs to try and do, the most difficult job. And also for the fact that he would never come anywhere near getting a Hellberg. So let's give our Haspy Award Coach of the Year to Todd Payten. How's that?
I couldn't agree more.
Good stuff.
I was actually going to say that, but I thought, no, I'd let you talk your way into it. I guess with Scott Robertson just continues to do a great job, and I know we gave Scott Dixon the Sportsman of the Year for his consistency and winning year after year, and that's pretty much what Scott Robertson's done. But yeah, Todd Payten done an amazing job when he took over from Stephen Kearney. I don't know what was Todd's win-loss record as head coach.
He'd never been a head coach.
And he lost?
Oh, you mean at the end? What was his record?
From the time he took over.
Okay, so I think probably around 50-50, I think he must have ended.
Yeah.
I mean, because the first game, the best game was the second game where we won 18-0 against St. George. We lost the next game. We were winning, losing. Then we got a little run. He was probably close to 50-50, which is about all you can ever ask with a coach in the NRL. I mean, that's a bloody good record. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how he goes next year. Very interesting.
If you're going 50-50, you're going to make the top 8, aren't you?
That's right. You are. So obviously we lost the first 2 or 3 matches. He'd be bloody close to it anyway. It'll be very interesting to see how he goes as coach next year with the Cowboys, because they've got a really interesting roster up there, and it'll just be interesting to see whether he carries the same sort of approach across to them. So but Todd Payton, you've got an award, son. Good on you.
Congratulations, Todd Payton.
Let's go to Sporting Moment of the Year 2020, mate. We got 4 moments here. Why don't we start with number 1? You can kick it all off for us.
Oh, Kane Williamson, that 251 against the West Indies. It was, from memory, it was a chanceless innings. I don't think he gave a chance in the whole dig, and he just loves batting at Seddon Park in Hamilton, doesn't he? I think it's his fifth century on that wicket, 22nd century. He's going to go on and make 35 to 40 centuries, I think.
I know.
Once his career's up, 10,000 runs, no doubt about it.
Yep.
He's just a great batsman to watch, and he jumped up into second place on the ratings. So that was a great innings to watch. I think I watched pretty much the whole innings on Spark Sport. Congratulations to them; they've done a great job with the cricket so far.
Not too bad, is it? Not too bad. Not too bad on Spark Sport.
Yep. Kane Williamson's 251.
Yeah. That 251, mate, just before we get on to the next one, that was one of the best innings I think I've ever seen. I mean, for a start, that wicket when he first came in, I mean, that was going everywhere. It was, I mean, it had a little bit of pace to it, but my God, it was about the greenest Test wicket I think I've ever seen. And he came in first morning of a Test with perhaps the greenest wicket you've ever seen. They were bowling well, and he ends up walking off about a day and a half later with 251 on the board. I mean, Baz McCullum said he wouldn't be surprised if we were 4 or 5 down by lunch. Yeah, he was so wrong. And the West Indies couldn't bat on it. So what an innings it was, and what a player he is. That was a great moment, 251.
There was a point during that innings too where I can't remember who was commentating at the time, but Kane was on about 160, and he played, I can't even remember what type of shot it was. And the commentator at the time said that shows the patience of Kane Williamson. He's over 150 before he pulls out that particular shot. Might have been a hook shot. I can't. But
there was a couple of times, like he got his first 50 pretty quick, and then he was stuck in the 60s there was one time when he was stuck on the same score for about 20 balls, 25 balls, but just didn't seem to bother. It doesn't seem to care. It's just the next ball, the next ball, the next ball. He seems to be able to just completely switch off and switch on, and that's just the class of the man. What an innings it was, 251.
The next moment, one of my favourites for the year was the freak, Will Jordan's 2 tries against Argentina. Comes off the bench, and within 5 minutes, he's got 2 tries to his name.
Yeah.
Just a freak.
Come on, mate. We've been screaming about it for months. When's Will Jordan going to play? When's he going to play? They bring him on. We were right all along. We bloody knew it, didn't we? What a player the guy is. And he's got the name Jordan too, and he had 23 on his back, and he performed like it too. Man, what a superstar. The wife, I was saying to Sheree, I'm watching with the wife. Obviously, she doesn't really watch the Super Rugby. She watches the All Blacks, doesn't watch the Super Rugby. And I was watching with her, and she was like, who is this guy? You know, he's got a cape on. He's just a phenomenon. So Will Jordan, and like I say, mate, the guy just seriously has to be in the starting lineup somewhere. You just have to find a position. You know, so that was a great moment. 2 tries. The next one, we talked about it a little bit earlier because she was our Sportswoman of the Year, was Courtney Duncan winning that World Championship in the trail bikes. Just a phenomenal performance, especially after she crashed off on the first lap and just made her way through the whole field to win the World Championship. Courtney Duncan winning that World Championship, that was a great moment as well. And our final great moment of the year was Israel Adesanya knocking out Paulo Costa, the guy with all the muscles, but he can't take a punch in the mouth at UFC to retain his UFC middleweight crown. Israel Adesanya, what a moment that was as well. So what's your moment of the year, Macca?
I think it's probably going to have to be my non-favourite sport. I think
I think so too.
Israel Adesanya knocking out Paulo Costa. Man, that was a hell of a punch.
It was. It was a great fight, actually. I watched it at Sky City, and the first round, he just kicked him. He just kicked him and kicked him and kicked him, stayed his distance, kicked him and kicked him. And then the next round, he just showed him who was boss. Israel Adesanya, perhaps our, like we say, our biggest athlete in New Zealand at the moment, most renowned worldwide. And we're going to give our sporting moment of the year to Israel Adesanya.
Congratulations, Israel.
We will get that to City Cookboxing.
Right, time to move on to we've done the Haspies. Now it's time for a few highlights, lowlights, and hopes. All called the Hottest Sports Podcast Awards, and we've got a few highlights, a few lowlights, and some hopes for next year. So
cool.
Start with the highlights of the year. Number one for me was the Crusaders winning Super Rugby. Just a great competition. It's a bit of a shame there wasn't a final, but they've fixed that for next year. So we'll see a final. But yeah, Crusaders winning Super Rugby for me is my first highlight.
Yeah, it's not a highlight for me, but the style they played was definitely a highlight. No, I appreciate the rugby they play. And like I say, they're breeding All Blacks down there, so it's not so bad. They look better in black anyway.
Yep.
Our second highlight of the year, the two motor racing Scotties, Scottie Dixon and Scott Mclaughlin. What performers those guys are, and wasn't it great to see at the end of the year that Scottie Mclaughlin started to make the transition over to Indy cars with that final race in St. Petersburg, even though he crashed out, just the look on his face afterwards when he was like, that was the best moment of my life. Wow, these cars are amazing. I was just like, that's what it's all about, really, just seeing the enjoyment. And those guys do race with smiles on their faces. You can tell it by the way they drive the cars. So the two Scotties. Definitely up there.
I'm just going to add a quick other motor racing one. Seeing Shane van Gisbergen finally win the Bathurst.
That was cool.
Was a big highlight too. And 7 hours sitting there watching the motor racing. That was great to see Kiwi come through in the end.
Yeah, he's a cool guy, Scott van Gisbergen. He's an old bogan from way back. It was great to see him have some success this year as well. Another highlight of the year, especially considering what we had over the first half of the year, was full crowds for afternoon games of rugby. You and I have been calling for afternoon games of rugby for decades.
Yep.
Literally, it has been decades.
Yeah.
We've been saying, look, so many times, the rugby's not been that great. They're playing and wet and it's cold and all that. So as soon as we got afternoon rugby, oh my God, look at the state. Look, it's 30 points to 20. There's running rugby. It's great to watch. We're like, geez, preaching to the converted here. That was one of my highlights of the year for sure.
No shit, Sherlock.
I reckon, eh? Who knew? Who knew, mate? That rugby was supposed to be played during the day.
Yeah, who knew? Go back to the days of test matches at 2:35 p.m.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the next highlight is one that we both enjoyed immensely. Possibly, well, I know I did. Possibly shed a tear or two when it finally happened, and that, of course, was the mighty Liverpool sealing a 30-year gap and winning a top-flight title in England, securing that Premier League title when we thrashed Chelsea and got the championship trophy on that lovely morning in July.
Yeah, man, it was more than 2 tears I shed. I shed buckets, to be fair. I mean, I've been waiting, 30 years for that. And the only shame was, there was no supporters there to see it. Luckily, we could see it on TV, but wow, man, it was like, it's like one of those things, I seriously, maybe 10 years ago, I seriously doubted whether I would ever see Liverpool win the Premier League again before I died. One of those things I thought, I just don't think we're ever going to get back up there. And we did. And it just made me feel so good. Yeah. And so now, before I die, all I need is the Warriors to win the NRL. Okay, so, man, it feels so good when your team wins. I know although, and it's always, it feels better when your team loses for ages. I know that seems weird, but it does. The longer you lose, even though it's just desperation and heartache and all that stuff, when they finally do win, if it's been a long break or a long, it just is more glorious. And that was just such a glorious moment. We are the Premier League champions. We are Premier League. We are Premier League. Top of the table.
It's great to win trophies along the way, you know, like a League Cup or an FA Cup or, you know,
or even a Champions League.
Great to win that. And the Super Cup and the World Club Championship, they were all great to win, but it doesn't compare with the Premier League title. As Bill Shankly once said, this is our bread and butter.
Exactly, mate.
When he's talking about the League Championship. So,
Exactly.
And hopefully we can repeat that in front of a few fans this current season. So roll on May 2021 and hopefully we can see that trophy lifted at Anfield again.
Well, we're in the right spot at the moment, mate. We just got to stay there, don't we? Hey, just got to stay there.
Next highlight for me was the emergence of the new Wellington Phoenix. We talked about this before when we were talking about them in the Team of the Year category. I just repeating what I said before. Ufuk Talai did an amazing job to take over the team from Mark Redan, who took half the players with him to his new team in Melbourne.
What a dick.
And, I think he replaced them with better players, to be perfect.
Yeah, he did.
Gary Hooper, David Ball coming in. Of course, Stephen Taylor was there. He's gone, unfortunately. But, it'll be really interesting to see how they go. And hopefully with the Trans-Tasman bubble, we might see some home games early in the new year. So we're still hopeful of that. And, that's been a highlight for me.
Definitely, mate. Phoenix were definitely a highlight for me this year as well. I love the style Ufuk Talai's got them playing. And, he seems to be able to build a roster too. So I just hope that they can follow on their great form this year with their form next year. And our final highlight of the year was the Warriors' performances this year on and off the field. Just loved everything they stood for this year. I love the way they played their football. They seem to be playing more with a smile on their face now. Obviously, that's got down to a little bit with the coach, etc. The way they sort of held themselves as ambassadors for the game, the way that they went across there and sacrificed everything for the game. They just made me proud to be a Warriors fan, even though, we're probably the least successful team in the comp. It really made me proud to be a fan. And after the really rough and rocky time we've had over the last 5 or 6 years with coaches and players and just turmoil and ownership and all that sort of stuff, it was nice to, and especially when I think back to the beginning of the season when I just thought, this is just all going to be so crap again. The way it ended and the way that they played just made me proud to be a Warriors fan again. And I can wear my jersey out in public without a cap and dark glasses. So, really proud of the way the Warriors played this year. They were one of my highlights for sure.
Quite right.
Okay.
Lowlights. I've got 5 lowlights that I'm going to go through quickly. Number 1 is VAR. Number 2 is VAR. 3 is VAR. Number 4 is VAR. And 5 is VAR.
Oh, hang on. And the sixth one, we're going to go upstairs and check it.
Officials using it. And I've just read an article this morning on the Daily Mail. Referees chief David Ellery says VAR has been a success in capital letters, with football now fairer, despite fans and players being left fuming by long delays and strange decisions. David Ellery, if you think VAR has been a success, give yourself an uppercut, son.
Mate, we've been a broken record this year, and it just seems every single game. It just seems like they're getting it wrong. I just don't know. I just don't know whether they've got any common sense. That's all that's required. Yesterday in the Liverpool game, 2 clear handballs.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not going to give them, fine, but don't give any of them. The thing is, I'm going to be watching the next game, and they're going to give one of those. Then there's the offside. They didn't. Son's goal, when I first saw it, I thought he's offside. Then they started drawing lines. Then they said, and started adjusting the lines, and then all of a sudden he wasn't offside. So, look, I think it's the implementation of it. I did notice that something that you posted on one of the Liverpool pages a couple of weeks back regarding the Champions League and the way that it's done in the Champions League. But then Liverpool's last game in the Champions League, VAR was all over the show. So once again, it just comes down to the people in the box and the referee and just using their common sense and using it for what it's intended for. And it just seems like it's not being used for what it's intended for. It's being used to hyper-analyze tiny little parts of the game that weren't even really parts of the game before, you know? And it was supposed to be there to get rid of the howler. Yeah. And while it might do that, it's just doing other stuff. And
that's going to be a broken record again. But the clear and obvious error, and even former referees have come out and said that, you know, then they're not just looking at clear and obvious errors. They're looking at absolutely everything with a fine tooth comb.
It's
ridiculous. And the thing about you brought up the Champions League game in Denmark last week. The players from both teams, with over 3 decisions that took a long time, 12 minutes they were standing in the freezing cold, waiting for VAR to make a decision. So that's not clear and obvious errors.
No.
None of those 3 are clear and obvious errors. So get on with the game. You're causing players to get injured because they're standing around getting cold. Why has Liverpool got so many injuries with muscles? You know, why? Not just Liverpool either. So many other teams have got players going down with muscle injuries. And it's just, you know, you can go on about the congested schedule. You know, they talk about the busy Christmas season coming up. It's actually, Liverpool's got more breaks over the congested Christmas
we did last year
than we have over the last 8 weeks. So
the clear
and obvious. If you can't see something in 30 seconds, get on with the game.
Yeah. What I can't understand is this is supposedly the biggest sport in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. I watch a game like Rugby League where, you'd say the revenues of the NRL compared to the Premier League are probably 1%, you know, the worldwide TV and all that sort of, surely. So why is their NRL so much better? I mean, I know they're different sports and I know they're looking at different things, but they're still subjective decisions being made by someone in front of a screen, and they just make the decision and say, that's it, and we're going to go with it. And I think people would forgive people for even making a mistake if they did it quicker. So, you know, it's just we're missing out on that flow. Football used to be one of those games that was just continuous, the flow. And that was one of the big arguments for not bringing in VAR. We don't want to interrupt the flow. Yeah. And I thought, no, it won't do that. It will be like the Rugby League. They won't interrupt the flow. It's definitely interrupted the flow. Where's the flow? There's no flow.
Yeah.
The flow. It's just, VAR has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But we have got a couple of other things that disappointed us this year as well. So let's just move on. VAR's still going to be the next year.
My next one was a 60-game baseball season. I just don't think they should have bothered when it got down to that. I mean, baseball's played over 162 games. You have a 6-month regular season, and then you have a month of playoffs. And that's how it's been for the last 793 years. And it's just, I know other sports have gone through this, and COVID did stuff up a lot of things. But when it came down to just 60 games, I think once it got below 100, they should have just canned it. You know, I love my baseball during the regular season over the 6-month period. I probably watch 4 to 5 games, 6 games a week. I'm lucky if I watch 6 games across the whole season until it got to the playoffs. Obviously, I watched a lot more. But I just could not get interested. And
the playoffs got me excited.
Yeah,
the playoffs got me excited, but they always do in all of those American sports. 60-game baseball season just seems it'd be like having a 5-game NRL sort of thing, wouldn't it? It's like we'll just play half a dozen games. You know, the thing about baseball and the reason that you get such swings and roundabouts, even the top team loses 30 games a season, is because they play so many games, you know, and that swing and that sort of continuous sort of, you know, game after game after game in different cities and all that, that's what makes baseball. And it just wasn't that this year, was it? It was something completely different.
No, and I mean, and players get into routines in baseball, and when they're going through a slump, they try different things to get out of that slump. And then once they find something to get them out of that slump, they go on a run. But you just didn't have time in a 60-game season. You had to be playing your absolute best.
On your game straight away. Or out.
If you hit a slump in game 15, you might get it back before the end of the 60 games if you're lucky. Yeah. Whereas in a 162-game season, if your slump begins in game 15 and you come out of it in game 55, you've still got another 110 games to go.
Yeah, it's a different sport. It just becomes a different sport. And couldn't agree more. 60-game baseball season. Hopefully that's the last of them. Another thing that really got my go and yours, and we talked about this a little bit, obviously it couldn't be helped, but it definitely affected the sport worldwide, is having no crowds at sport. I don't think I really appreciated how much spectators meant to sports until this year. I mean, I've seen games played behind closed doors, football, etc., for certain races and all that sort of stuff and things like that. But I don't think I fully. I mean, I love hearing the singing in the football or the barracking at a game of rugby or rugby league, and I just don't think I realised how much I'd miss it until it just completely wasn't there. They piped in the other noise, for some of the broadcasts, which sort of seemed to make a little bit of a difference, sort of kidded me sometimes to thinking that I was watching the real thing. But it wasn't the real thing, was it, Mecca? It wasn't the real thing. It just made it different.
And that's really been showed by now that they're allowing 2,000 people into the games. The 2,000 people
absolutely
are in these crowds and making the noise of 60,000 people.
Aren't they? Aren't they doing well? Aren't they doing well? Yeah.
So, no crowds at sport around the world has been a real bummer for 2020. Another one for me that was a real low light back in March, April, May, this even dragged into, was the continued reluctance of the IOC to postpone the Olympics in the face of the COVID pandemic. I mean, it was just stupid how, the whole world was seeing millions of cases every day, and the IOC was saying, oh, no, I think the Olympics can still go ahead in July.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, because they're the IOC, mate. They don't live on planet Earth. These are the people that are bringing in breakdancing.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. So for me, I think the only thing that we can do is boycott the Olympics. It's getting really bloody stupid. You know how the Olympics, they're saying, oh, it's getting too big. Only big countries can now host the Olympics. I got a solution for that. Take away all the sports except for swimming, athletics, rowing, those base sports that the Olympics used to all be about, and forget everything else. Get rid of golf, get rid of tennis, get rid of football, get rid of all those other sports, take it back to its base level, what it used to be, and forget all those X Games sports, sevens rugby. I don't want to see them. I don't want, honestly. I mean, it's just, they're not sports. A lot of synchronized swimming. I mean, when I first saw that in the 80s or 90s, I thought this is ridiculous. Now they're doing it on land as part of a fucking sport. The IOC is just missing the point, mate. It's just ridiculous. So until they get back to the real sports of athletics and swimming, etc., I can't be bothered with the Olympics anymore.
Yeah, it used to be, I mean, up until probably around 2-3 Olympics ago, I used to I couldn't wait for the Olympics.
Me too.
To come around, and the London Olympics were just fantastic,
weren't they?
In 2012. Yep. But then 4 years ago against Rio, it was like, whatever.
Yeah, it was, And it's sad, man.
It is sad. And I wasn't really, if the IOC had said, oh, we're actually cancelling the Olympics for 2020, I would have gone, no, okay.
It's probably the right move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the IOC live in a different world.
Just pig-headedness, and as we said, just introducing things like breakdancing is just devaluing the rest of the sport and the medals they hand out for them. It's just ridiculous.
It's crazy, man. Can you imagine telling us in the 90s that by the year 2020 they're going to have breakdancing at the Olympics? I mean, look, man, I think those guys are freaking talented. Those guys that can make themselves look like, do all that. So, man, wickedly talented. But it's not an Olympic sport.
No.
It's come on.
Yeah.
Okay, it's something else that really sort of depressed me, and I know it depressed you. This this year, mate. The Auckland Tuatara having to withdraw from the ABL and all the furore that went with that. They were prepared to do their thing, and the management of the ABL over there had been called into question with some of the comments that were made. It's just so sad, especially after, the previous couple of years building their base of support and getting a name, and, it's just really sad.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, all the momentum that they gained, certainly towards the end of last season, qualifying for the playoffs in that penultimate game against the Brisbane Bandits with a heroic pitching performance from Josh Colmenter, and who can forget Chris Richards' catch in the outfield, which he nearly took the whole fence with him in completing that catch. And it was great. I mean, 4,500 people at North Harbour Stadium for that playoff game. Just unbelievable. That they could, the second biggest crowd ever in the ABL, the history of the ABL.
They don't need us, though.
Yeah. Very sad to see the season actually kicked off last night with Melbourne playing Sydney. Sydney had been trumpeting the arrival of former Boston Red Sox player Manny Ramirez, but he was a no-show in game one.
Did he not turn up?
No explanation has been given as to why he was playing game one. A lot of rumours going around on the social media threads that it was all just a big publicity stunt. Bloody expensive one, if you ask me. So, remains to be seen if Manny appears in a Sydney Blue Sox uniform, but we'll just have to wait and see. But Melbourne Aces, the reigning champions, ran out winners last night over the Sydney Blue Sox in game one of this shortened and reduced teams ABL. So we'll follow that in the new year and see what happens.
Yeah, bring back the Tuatara.
Quite right. And the last of our lowlights, although I'm sure there are many more, and you touched on it a bit earlier, Aaron, was the Black Caps performances in Australia. It was trumpeted to be, the series that we were going to go over and really show who was the better team in this part of the world. And unfortunately, Lockie Ferguson broke down in that first test in Perth.
Trent Bolt, second over, or whatever it was.
Bolt had just come back from a long-term injury and didn't really perform. And then the Boxing Day test, I was there with 85,000 of my closest friends. Trent Bolt picked up a wicket in his third ball, and everybody thought, oh, here we go. And, that was it.
Then we didn't get another wicket for 2 days.
Seemed like it.
It felt like that, didn't it?
Yeah, got completely thrashed 3-0 in the series, which was really, really disappointing.
Yeah, it was. We had a few injuries. We had a few perhaps lame-ass excuses, but we just... And also COVID hit when we hit the one-dayers, which was unfortunate. But, it was just so sad because we'd looked forward to it for so long. And maybe that was the problem, the fact that we haven't played them properly in their own backyard for so long that we were sort of a little bit overawed, a little bit like the World Cup when we finally made it through that final and Baz Mclaughlin was out in the first over, sort of like it all fell down from there. It was a little bit like that, wasn't it? It was a bit of a deja vu. And I just hope the next time we go over there won't be another 20 years' time. It'll be in a couple of years, I hope. And our team is still doing really well that we can take them on. But we just... Also, low light, we just don't play them enough, We're up there with one of the best teams, and we just get given lip service. So let's just play them a little bit more. Would be nice as well, wouldn't it?
Oh, well, time to let's finish off our year-end edition of the Hot Air Sports podcast with a few hopes for 2021. So I know one that we're both looking forward to, and we've just talked about it as a low light, hoping to see crowds back at top-level sport around the world.
Wouldn't that be great? I can't wait till I see a full cop again singing You'll Never Walk Alone, or, I go to... I mean, the thing that really brought that home was when the Super Rugby relaunched, wasn't it? That first day game, and they had the almost full Eden Park, and the sun was shining, and everyone was just like in such a good mood, weren't they? They were like, we're going to away for 6 months, we're back together. We're social beings, and as much as I love watching sport on TV, nothing beats going to a live sporting event. So, man, can't wait for the sport, for the spectators to get back in those stadiums, especially overseas. Obviously, we're very, very lucky here that we get to be a part of that. But I can't wait, especially in the football. Can't wait. I mean, you did touch on it earlier. 2,000 people in the cop. I've never heard them sing so loud. And when Bobby Firmino scored that goal yesterday, the way he ran to them, man, it made me feel good. So, can you imagine when there's 15,000 in the cop, mate, instead of 2? It's going to be fantastic.
Next hope for 2021, won't dwell on this too much because we've talked about it again in our lowlights. I'd just like to see baseball returning to a full season.
Yeah, ditto basketball, ditto everything, really. Enough with these, enough with these tiny little seasons. I'm over them. Let's get back to sport as it was pre-pandemic, please. VAR improves its protocols. We're not going to go on about this as either, though, but improves its protocols, and the lawmakers show some common sense around offsides and clear and obvious errors. We talked about that before, but please, please, please just be a little bit more sensible about all that sort of stuff. The All Blacks. Can the All Blacks just show a little bit more consistency? It's something that I've had for 50 years of my life, and this year I didn't have it as much, and I said it was deja vu. I thought I was back in 1998. Yeah. At the end of the last couple of tests, a lot better. But can we just get a little bit more consistency, please? Yeah,
we certainly didn't see it, did we, over the 6 tests the All Blacks played, with 3 wins, 1 draw and 2 losses. And, the 2 losses, I don't think we expected either of those.
No, I mean, maybe the Aussie one, but definitely not the Argentina one.
Didn't see that coming. And Argentina fully deserved it. They played well in that game. But yes, we do need to see some more consistency. Continuing on the rugby topic, I think it's time that rugby needs to take concussion more seriously. We've seen recent instances of, early onset dementia in some what you would call young rugby players. And, it's just something they really need to look at. I mean, the game's different to what it was 20 years ago. I mean, you've got, and it's something I've mentioned before, Murray Mexted, when he played in the late 80s, was considered a big man in rugby. He was only 89 kilos.
Yeah, crazy, eh?
As a number 8. And, I mean, Andy Hayden was a monster of a man.
At over huge, giant!
100 kilos,
Yeah.
And now we've got most backs are 100 kilos or more. I mean, you get the odd one apart, like Aaron Smith or Bowden Barrett that are under 100 kilos. And the game is played at such a greater pace now, and there's no protection for the head. And a lot of these head conditions are created by sheer accidents. Just somebody going in and tackling, and the head ends up on the hip bone. Bang, you're out. It's got to come down. I think if you're knocked out more than 3 times across, a couple of years, that's it, pal. Retire.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Who was it? The Lions hooker, or the Pommy hooker? Steve Thompson was in the news recently saying that he doesn't even remember being at being in Australia even for the World Cup in 2003 when they won it. It's a really sad situation, and it's not just rugby either, mate. David Luiz and Raul Jimenez. Actually, when you compare football with rugby, considering football is such a massive sport worldwide, the protocols in rugby are actually a lot more advanced than the protocols in football. Raul Jimenez and David Luiz, that hideous head clash they had the other day, and Raul Jimenez, of course, suffering a fractured skull because of it. The concussion protocols for David Luiz, he actually stayed on the field till half time, and then he complained of headaches. It's almost like the power is still with the players in football. I know I'm staying on the field. No, the doctors just can't tell them. I think you need doctors at these professional sporting events, and they need to be listened to. They need to be, if they say, look, this guy is suffering, we're going to take him off the field. I'm sorry, I don't care whether it's worth millions of dollars or, your crowd's disappointed. I'm sorry, the player has to come first. And the player doesn't often know, they can't make the decision for themselves at that stage. For one, they're concussed, so now, the protocols in all sports for head injuries need to be taken more seriously.
And you're talking about football there. I mean, we look at some of the recent deaths of some of the great 1966 players. obviously they played with a far harder ball than footballers play with now. But Jack Charlton, Nobby Stiles, and Martin Peters all died in the last 12 months suffering from dementia, all related to the fact that they used to head the ball a heck of a lot. And they've even gone as far in England now as saying until you're a certain age, I can't remember what the age cutoff is.
12, I think.
Not allowed to head the ball at training sessions.
That's right. That's right. I heard a really interesting thing about the weight of the ball, like the way that people say. I actually heard from a concussion specialist who said, yeah, lots of people say, oh no, the ball was a lot heavier then, it's a lot different now. But the actual weight of the ball when they kicked off each game weighs exactly the same as the weight of a ball now. The difference is those balls that were leather and stuff obviously got a lot of weight in them and became, but they couldn't be kicked as hard. Okay, so the ball nowadays is traveling at a far greater speed. And this doctor actually said that it's not the weight of the ball that causes the problem, it's the speed of the ball. Yeah. So it's actually even, and the way that the game is played now, he was saying it could be considered more dangerous today than what it was in the old days. And I thought that was a really, really interesting point. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do in football because hitting is a key part of it. But yeah, definitely around the practicing. I heard someone like, Chris Sutton the other day saying he'd done an analysis because his dad's got dementia and he played football. And he's saying, you know, what can I do? I suppose I can't do anything. I'm well retired by now. But he did a quick calculation and he said he reckons that he headed 100,000 balls in his football career. See, that would have been a conservative estimate, 100,000 headers. What can he do now about that? Not really much, you know? So I guess the thing is around practice, around all that sort of stuff, you can definitely minimize the harm. But yeah, all sports need to have concussion protocols. Well, way better.
I don't think Bobby Firmino would have been able to chest the like he headed it yesterday. Anyway, moving on, the Black Caps, hopefully they continue to improve and make the final of the World Test Championship. They're certainly going in the right direction at the moment.
Where are they seated at the moment? I think we're third, aren't we, behind India and Australia? But once India get whipped by Australia 3-0 or 4-0, I don't know how many tests they're playing, we may be in second place. So I have high hopes for our team, our test team especially. And wouldn't that be nice to see us playing at Lords, maybe taking on the Australians there? Or wouldn't it be nice if we could take on the English there? The English need to win a few more tests, but we owe them. We do.
We certainly do.
Yeah, that'd be lovely to see that.
Next on the list of hopes for 2021, the return of big world stadium events. We've got the Olympics there, but we've just talked about that. We don't really care. But Euro 2020 and all those other events that have been cancelled this year, hoping they can get back into action next year.
Absolutely, mate. Big tournaments, bring them back. I mean, the landscape was fairly barren for all those big events. I mean, they postponed the Euro 2020s. It's still going to be called Euro 2020, even though it's held in 2021, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, man, can't wait till we get back to normal in regards to that. Also, something else I'm looking forward to in 2021. Don't know whether it will happen. Probably won't, but maybe 2022. The Warriors returning to Mount Smart. I've missed my Warriors. I've missed going to live rugby league. I mean, I can go to the local games, but it's not quite the same as a day at Mount Smart on the terraces yelling abuse at the opposition team. I've really missed it. So, I want to take my grandson for the first time.
Quite right. And the same. You could say it'd be great to see the Phoenix back at Wellington Stadium.
Absolutely, wouldn't it? You know, it's just, I can't wait to. I mean, they're talking about Trans-Tasman bubbles now. I don't know exactly how that's going to work with sports teams having to quarantine and stuff. Maybe that's something for hopes for 2022. But bring those professional teams playing in Australian comps back over this side of the Tasman so we can get a taste of the action, please.
Quite right. And the final one, it's a biggie.
Oh, huge.
It's a biggie. I don't know whether we'll be able to give it full coverage, but we'll have a crack at it.
Go on. The end of racism. The end of racism in sports. Yeah. This is just nuts, man. The way that this has gone, especially in football. I just can't. I mean, it's so hard for us living in a utopia. I mean, I know we're not perfect over here, but compared to what's going on overseas, it's so hard for us to even understand. I just can't get my head around it. Specifically, the Millwall game the other day where they all booed. They have spectators in the ground for the first time in months, and the players take a knee and all the crowd boos. I'm like, why would you boo? All they're doing is trying to, create awareness.
A lot of football pundits and fans said after that happened, well, what else would you expect from Millwall fans? Yeah, which is a sad indictment on their club.
It is. It's a real sad indictment because I'm sure not everyone that supports Millwall is a racist. You know, and things like throwing bananas at black players. Half the time that goes on, what I don't get is that half of the other team are black as well. I do not understand. It's just something that that just confuses the hell out of me. And then you go to American sports, and of course the knee started with Colin Kaepernick, and he still can't get a gig in the NFL, even though what's he done wrong? I mean, and LeBron James and all those guys trying to speak out against things, and then the owners saying, "Oh, just play your game, get in your lane, and dribble, don't talk." And you're like, all these people are trying to do is make a positive contribution to wider society and make things more inclusive. And people want to, I think we all just need to stand up and just say we're not for it,
Right.
But it's a massive one. I doubt we're going to see the end of it in 2020. If we do, 2021's going to be a bloody great year, isn't it, mate?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that pretty much brings an end to the year for the Hot Air Sports podcast. We'll be back again in 2021. Not sure yet when, but it'll be fairly early in the year, sometime in January or early February. I don't know about you, but I've had a blast doing these podcasts over the last...
Been good fun, eh? Yeah,
a lot of fun. Took us 10 years to actually finally do it. Even we've been talking about it so long.
It took us 10 years to record it. We used to do this on the phone, without recording it. But man, it's been a lot of fun. I think we've done 25, 26 over the year, and it took COVID to force us into it. It's not going to take COVID to make us do more. We got plenty more to come. Merry Christmas to everyone that watches this. We got better things planned for 2021, and Merry Christmas to you too, bro. You're a beautiful man.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you and Sharice and your lovely whānau. I love the Man whānau. They're wonderful, wonderful people. And
thanks,
hopefully we'll actually get to catch up in the flesh.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? That'd be nice.
So all the best for the Christmas and New Year season to everybody who enjoys the Hot Air Sports podcast. Please send us a Christmas wish on the YouTube link, and hope it's a successful one. And here's hoping for a bloody good 2021. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, boy.